Welcome to Metrics That Matter. We will learn how to make sense of your fundraising data to make better decisions and raise more money with less effort. Brought to you by fundraisingreportcard.com, the simple and free analytics and reporting tool for nonprofit pros. Now measuring is easier than ever with fundraisingreportcard.com.
Episode 2 is here, Zach. We got some questions. A lot of questions. Not enough to cover all today, but we're going to get to 3 of them.
Too many questions, too little time. But man, am I happy that we have all these questions. We got a job, Tim. We can't stop producing podcast episodes.
It'll just be forever now with endless questions.
Hopefully. And plus, we were flirting with the idea of adding video to future podcast episodes. So if we get
video at that,
more questions, you'll get to see us. Maybe that's not a good incentive. Maybe less. They already sent in the questions.
They did. So we're looking at doing that. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, what do we got today? I'm excited. I think we got questions from 3 different people that we're going to address.
Yeah,
is that right?
People. We have many more in the queue that we will get to later. So if you do not hear your question, fear not. They will be on future episodes. So first up, Lisa from Tampa called in to 575-815-4573, just like you can. And here's her question.
This is Lisa Bricker calling from Frankie's Friends in Tampa, Florida. And my question is, what is a healthy percentage of donor increase from year to year utilizing metrics data for retention and increased giving? Thank you.
What a timely question.
How so, Zach?
Because literally 2 days before our recording of this, the 2018 Giving USA report came out. And although these big annual reports are not super indicative of, trends at maybe smaller nonprofit organizations, it is a great barometer of general philanthropic tendencies and things like that. So the overall amount of dollars given in the past year, reported by Giving USA and the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University, was about $410 billion.
Highest ever. It's a lot of money.
Wow. But prior year was $390 billion. So back of the napkin.
Year before, do we know, has this been steadily increasing or is it jumping around?
Giving has been increasing in terms of total dollars ever since the economic recession. There's been a bounce back since the economic recession.
It's shifted to more major donors. So is that accurate?
More major donors, but also there's just been general trends in individual giving going up and more like donor advised funds and things like that taking the place of other dollars. And then of course it's broken down by all the different sectors within the actual report. But the big thing is going from 390 to 410. So that's about a 5% increase in growth in giving, you could say. It's really not the overall growth in terms of total dollars that are being spent, like as representative of GDP, but we're not going to go down that route right now.
We will not.
To Lisa's point, we're talking about a 5% increase year over year as a nation of philanthropic people in total giving. But to answer her question, that can be used as a little bit of a barometer for what is realistic at my organization. Now, the thing that I'll mention, and I've mentioned it to every single organization that I've ever had the chance to get on the phone with, is before you start looking to peer benchmarks, so even this Giving USA data that I just referenced, you're going to want to refer to your own historical data. So my question, right back to Lisa would be, well, what was your growth rate last year? What was your growth rate the year before that?
Yeah, because you're trying to just improve within yourself. You have goals, like we have goals, and we set those goals based on prior successes or maybe not successes, depending on what happens.
The whole idea here of descriptive analytics, that word I keep throwing around in each episode, is that you can use your historical information to help inform future decisions, and that would be the best place to start. So we have this overarching kind of barometer that says, 5% year over year. That's great. Go for that. But at your own organization, at the individual level, you're definitely going to want to look at, what did we do last year? What did we do the year before that? And then as you start to get a sense for what that growth rate has been, maybe you look to peers in your region or peers that are of the similar sector, things along those lines. But know that, you've got this yearly, humongous report compiled by Giving USA and the Lilly School that's telling you, if you grew 5% this year, you're spot on.
Awesome. Anything else to say on this topic? I think that's
that. And if you're interested in more kind of research and reports, there's the individual donor benchmark report, IDB MTM-S02E02, and that's actually for smaller nonprofits. And it's similar to Giving USA in terms of trying to be like this comprehensive report, but it's trying to be comprehensive regarding just small nonprofits and mid-sized nonprofits. So if you're interested in more research and things like that around these subjects, definitely Google search that. It's a woman named Heather Yando. Heather, if you listen to this, I'm sorry. She compiles all this research through her consulting firm, and it's awesome. So I would definitely use that as another resource after you've looked at your own year-over-year growth rates to, reference that as well.
Okay. Next up, Craig from Philomath, Oregon, the City of Volunteers, wrote in to tim@imarketsmart.com, just like you can. Here's Craig's question. Some organizations only add records to donor databases once an entity, that is, an individual, couple, business, foundation, makes a donation or pledge, as they don't want to fill their database with potentially unproductive records that need to be maintained. In addition to creating records for donors, I like to add them as prospects are identified, as this enables fundraising staff to use the database's contact management tools to move prospects through that pipeline. When should a record be created in a donor database?
Craig, thanks so much for writing in. So that's a good question, but I also think it has a pretty, straightforward answer, which is if you want to start managing a relationship with someone, they should be in your database. Because the whole reason that they're in the database in the first place is so that the organization can start to develop that relationship. So that, if you've got 2 or 3 people on staff that might have contact with John Doe or Jane Doe, regardless of what the circumstance may be, you want them to all have access to top of mind and up-to-date information. So as soon as you want to start building that relationship, you want to have that record in your database. The whole idea of the database is that you and me, we're real smart, Tim. We've got big old brains. We can't remember everything. We're not particularly good at storing, spreadsheets in our heads. That's why these databases. Exactly. So, if you're locked in with a vendor that's maybe charging you
per record.
Yeah, like maybe that's a sign that you should be looking for other options or other opportunities. And maybe if you do your email marketing in a different provider than your database, maybe you can get away with just keeping records in your email marketing provider, but then you start to run into issues there.
Do any organizations separate prospects and donors in separate databases? Is that a thing?
So most of my engagements with our customers has been based around analyzing donations, so I'm not too privy. I mean, part of what I've been exposed to over the past few years, Tim, is seeing one system just for events data. So all the event giving and all the event tracking is happening in one database, and then all the normal donations and things like that, that's in the main database. And maybe the event data eventually makes it into the main database. And then there's also like the alumni tracking database for other information. So I've seen these disparate systems, and then you kind of pick and choose who you want from each one, but you run into issues there with attribution. So who is from the event database, who are they in the other database? You really struggle to kind of like
and
link
you can
them
do
up.
a lot with just segmenting into lists and things from a single database.
Exactly. So the more you can keep into one place, the better. That doesn't mean you don't use other tools. Like, for example, our company MarketSmart, we're a totally different tool. We're geared for planned and major gift fundraisers, but all of our data is accessible via API. So it's always up to date back in the main database. You got to keep clear records somewhere because that's kind of like your master file. Again, no one's going to keep track of all this. So the moment that you want to begin to develop a relationship with someone, that's when you got to start keeping a record of your interactions with them.
Yeah. And as far as maintaining records and that being a very time-consuming thing, what am I missing? It seems like if you're not dealing with that contact, that person can kind of sit idly by? That's
part of it, but then think of some of the unique circumstances that these nonprofit organizations face, Tim. If Jane makes a contribution and then John makes a contribution and they're husband and wife and now they're 2 different records in the database, well, someone needs to kind of consolidate that if that's the heuristic and standard that the organization has. Okay, well, this is now a couple, or, tag it as something like such. And then, of course, you have, the successful businessman or woman who makes a major contribution one year, and then next year it comes from their family foundation. Well, we need to reconcile that, because you start to run into these types of instances. And then, of course, you have potential for, pledges and either them being realized or not being realized. You need to mark that. So a lot of the ideas that come to my head in terms of maintenance rely around, reconciling contributions, but the same thing could happen with new newsletters. If you start to, identify that someone's on your newsletter, but they signed up with their personal email instead of their work email, well, we got to merge them. So I agree with Craig. There's a lot of maintenance, and it can be a full-time job maintaining the database, but think about how valuable it is to have that history, that track of that relationship that you've been developing. So it's kind of that asking yourself that question. Do I want to build a relationship with this person? And more importantly, does the organization want to build a relationship with this person? And if they're interacting with you, the answer is probably yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your fundraising efforts with easy-to-use analytics and charts. Get your proposals approved faster by using these beautiful and elegant charts created automatically with fundraisingreportcard.com. You'll also find a great blog that dives deep into what data means for your organization and how you can use it effectively to make smarter decisions. Start learning and start generating beautiful charts by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now back to Metrics That Matter.
Well, Alexa called in to 575-815-4573, just like you can. Here's her question.
Hi, this is Alexa from Connections for Abused Women and Their Children, and I have a question. How would you go about figuring out the major gift threshold for your organization? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? Is it 500? What's the best way to do that? And that's my question. Thank you.
I wonder if it's going to be like by season 4 or something like that, where I'll be like, okay, it doesn't excite me that much that people call in, but I love it, man. I love hearing these calls. Yes, Alexa, thank you so much for calling in and for your question that I'm sure other people are wondering about as well. Okay, so the idea is, what is the threshold for a major gift, right?
Yeah, and to me, it's what makes an impact at your organization, right? What is major to you guys at your organization? What can make a big impact? And that will vary a lot depending on what your mission is and what your financial situation is at your nonprofit, right?
I agree with you 100%, and I even like to extend this concept of major even further. So we think of major gift as a major contribution, something that's large enough to make a difference. Okay, so that's kind of in this financial realm, it's major. Well, then think about impact realm, what you just mentioned. It has a major impact. If someone were to write a check for this amount and it came in today, we'd all probably high five. Major impact. It would allow us to further our mission. Think about it then in terms of resources, time, effort to secure this type of contribution. It's major. Okay, it's generally not going to be as transactional as a piece of mail goes out and $20 comes back in. To secure a major contribution, whether that be a planned gift or a realized contribution now, a major gift, it's a major endeavor, generally, most of the time. In the world of planned giving, the number of stories I've heard of people we've never talked to before leaving us their house is just mind-boggling to me. But in terms of most engagements, it's major. So I like to think of setting that threshold and considering each of those 3 pieces of the puzzle. So trying to be a little bit more quantitative about it. I like a rule, and I think it was Amy Eisenstein who came up with it. I read a blog post of hers a while back. She says 5%. What's a contribution that 5% of your funders have made or could make? That's going to be your threshold. So if you were to take your donation database, and even if you just loaded it into Fundraising Report Card or just pulled it into an Excel spreadsheet and sort it, what is that top 5% from your existing, last 12 months or last 24 months? That's probably going to be where your cutoff is in terms of what is a major gift. It's going to be above that threshold, whatever's in that 5%. But then kind of, take with a grain of salt that it's going to take a major amount of work and effort and resources and time to secure contributions at that level. So if you were to, review this and get to that 5%, it says it's $1,000. $1,000 and above is your major gift threshold. And you feel good in your, your hunch tells you that if we were to get a $1,000 check today, it would have a major impact on us. The data is telling us $1,000 and above. But if you think to yourself, well, the time, money, and resources that would have to go into securing those $1,000 contributions, it probably would outweigh the $1,000 that we get back. It might be worth considering, okay, maybe our goal is going to be to set the threshold at $2,500 because then that checks all 3 boxes. And that has to then become, a strategic initiative to, secure contributions at that particular level, develop those relationships.
Right, because if you're a major gift officer, then your goal is to make sure you're paying for yourself at the very least, right? And all the resources that are involved with, traveling out to meet this major donor, and it needs to balance that out where that major gift is helping your mission, do great things.
Yeah, I mean, you're alluding to being profitable, and it's the same thing in any organization, for profit or nonprofit, that the kind of the frontline people do have a lot of responsibility to pay for themselves and then bring in profit for the organization. And I'm not saying that needs to be a driving factor when considering your thresholds. Probably the prior two pieces are more important, especially at a small shop. But mid-level, major institutions, organizations that have major gifts that are over $250,000 and above, they're coming up with those numbers in a very kind of analytical approach, looking at ROI, thinking about how much time, effort, energy goes into this, and makes it worthwhile, because then they can set goals and targets and things along those lines. So a little bit of a roundabout answer. If you're going to Google search this to keep the conversation going, look at Amy Eisenstein. She has a really good blog post on this, a couple little techniques, the 5% rule. But yes, like you mentioned at the onset, Tim, it's different for every organization, but you can definitely use a little bit of a quantitative approach, some of that gut feel, what makes a major impact, and come up with some thresholds that help you set targets, set goals, and make sure you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and it'll help you prioritize leads and potential gifts that you're trying to pursue based on that information.
And remember, these are real human beings,
They
real
are.
people, and
Yes.
building those meaningful relationships is kind of at the crux of all of this, even though this is a data podcast and I'm the data guy. But they're people, relationships. You'd be surprised who can
There
leave you
are
a house.
relationships and numbers. Exactly.
The art and the science of fundraising, Tim. I think I
As
wrote a
well.
blog post on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to episode 2 of season 2. And make sure to call in to 575-815-4573 or write in to tim@imarketsmart.com. And we'd love to answer your question on future episodes. So, yeah, do that.
Tim, you know that the next episode is going to be season 2, episode 3, which is the number 23, which was Michael Jordan's number, which means it's probably going to be the best episode we've ever had. So just stay tuned. I'm just
True. And
throwing
then
that out there.
4-5, 45, that was his comeback. So we have that to look forward to in season 4.
Yeah, wait a couple of years. We'll be here for season 4.
Yes.
All right, I can't wait.